Hi everyone, welcome back to Be an Artist. Today I'm sitting down with Christian Pryor again. This is part two of the conversation. If you haven't listened to part one yet, it's in the description box below. Let's get right into it. Have you looked into NFTs at all?
NFTs, did you say?
Yeah.
What's an NFT?
Non-fungible token. So a lot of musicians, it's like part of blockchain and crypto world.
Okay.
Kind of like trying to get their foot into like that world now that you can kind of sell your albums or like release like 10 albums as an NFT with um different like cover art. So basically it's supposed to be only one that exists and some person buys the right to that.
Oh,
But it's
right. Okay.
digital.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
So
I haven't. I've not heard of that. I need to
oh,
look into
really?
what that
Yeah, look
is.
at it.
Yeah.
I only started learning about it, but I spoke to my last podcast guest. He's like more into it, and we spoke about it a little bit.
Right. Okay.
Um, because they think it's like the way forward. It's kind of like collecting fine art digitally. So people
Yes.
would just pay just to own it.
Yeah, I see. I see. I see. That's interesting. Like I think that is a good, definitely a good premise, because like if you're putting out original music and you have your like super fans, which
Hmm.
that's kind of the goal, right? Like I think if you're putting out your own stuff, like you're gonna have different levels of fandom, right? You're gonna have the people at the bottom who just like listen to your stuff occasionally, maybe stream it on Spotify and they like what you're doing. They might come to a show if it happens that they're able to, and
Mhm.
that's cool. That's just like that's their level of engagement. And then you go higher up, higher up. You get to that top level where there's somebody who just loves everything you do and they respond to a lot of your posts and they are always the first person to buy the new release, and you might put something like, for example, I put up when I put music out there on Bandcamp, I have like a minimum amount, but people can choose to pay what they want.
Mhm.
And a couple of people pay like considerably more than what the minimum is because they are just like really good fans and they're nice people, so like those people might be interested in just supporting you as an artist in a
Mhm.
like a better, like a higher way. So something like that would be really cool. Yeah.
Hmm.
So is that like applying to a piece of music? So you write a piece of music and it's just for that person? Is that what it is? Or
I think, as far as I understood, it's just that specific digital release that they
okay.
get. So you'd have to, like, you wouldn't just be putting up like 100 of the same song. That wouldn't count. That's like cheating. But
Yeah.
if you put like individual cover art on that piece,
I see.
on
Right.
that
Okay.
album, for example, then you could do
Yeah.
like 10 versions of that album with
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
10 different cover arts. And
Right.
then yeah, I send
Yeah.
you um Faking Notes podcast.
Okay.
Drew's
Yeah.
I'll send you after. But he speaks
That'd
a
be
bit
good.
about marketing as well, but he's really into crypto. And
Okay.
I think in America it's really coming up. I spoke to another guy who's trying to get into it. Um I think it's still early stages and stuff for a musician, but
Mm.
I think people are interested in owning stuff. It's game theory. Like, as
Yes.
soon as it's something interesting, people want a piece of it, even if it's a digital, and you still,
Absolutely.
as far as I understood, you're still allowed to put your stuff out on Bandcamp and release it normally because that's not the specific NFT.
Yeah, you're basically like releasing a special edition that's only
Yeah,
available for that one person. So the thrill of it is having something unique that nobody else has, right?
yeah,
Like I totally get that. That's something that probably like I'm sure some artists did that in the past with like actual physical releases as well,
yeah. Because there
So
are stuff that you can buy. You can buy, limited edition prints with a
yeah,
download
yeah,
code, and then you pay
right.
more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. That's a really good idea. And I mean, I think you know like super fans are going to want to support artists in that way and they're
Mhm.
going to they're going to treasure having something like that. And maybe you can even attach a physical thing to it as well, like if you
Mhm.
buy this I'll also send you like a signed copy of the artwork or something, like
Yeah,
there's all kinds of possibilities in there. It's the same with like going into Patreon and having those kinds of ideas as well with funding.
yeah.
Like I think Patreon is a really really great idea, you know
Are you on Patreon?
No, not yet, but I
Okay.
think I will be soon. I guess I have this idea that I feel like it's the same with one of the reasons why I haven't put any funding applications out there yet. It's like I feel like I need to have done a certain amount of stuff before I'm allowed to apply for things, and I'm allowed to say, please support me. It's a completely made up thing. It's probably the same reason why I don't go around telling people the things I do. You know, there's this a little bit, maybe too much restraint that I have around these things sometimes. Like, so yeah. But
and then also it's a time commitment, because I feel like everybody on Patreon that takes it seriously, that has solid followership on Patreon, they have to keep on giving them content. Like, you have to give them a reason to stay there, rather than, I mean, I guess some people just will give you a little donation because they want to support you.
Yeah, but I think it's most sustainable when you turn it into an active sort of platform that you engage people on.
Yeah.
But that's kind of, could be fun. I know, like, somebody I really like, Larry Golding, started doing a Patreon over lockdown.
Yeah.
And I was following his Patreon for a while. I stopped just because it was at a point in the lockdown where at the beginning I was like, oh, I have some savings, and then slowly those savings started to disappear, and I was like, okay, I need to cut back on some costs here.
Yeah.
So I stopped, but his was amazing. He posted all kinds of cool stuff, like talking about his approach to harmony and that sort of thing. It was really good. So
it's great.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a really good thing for artists to get into, for sure.
Yeah. Are you familiar with this concept of 1,000 true fans?
Yeah, I read the book.
Really? I want to read it. I only read Matthew sent an email a few weeks ago with kind of an article about the book.
Yeah, the book, it's by Amanda Palmer, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It's by the Amanda Palmer. She's a singer, and I think she's a piano player. She's in a band. I can't remember what the band is, but she's also really big just as a solo artist as well. And she just wrote a book and talks about having 1,000 true fans, and how that's basically what she has. And it's allowed her to make a really good living from her music and travel the world. And it really makes sense, It does.
It made sense to me when I saw the numbers, because when you hear 1,000 fans, you think about 10 gigs worth of people, but obviously that's not how that's not how you should think about it.
No, it's 1,000 people who buy everything that you put out.
It's like what you call super fans.
Yeah.
Well,
actually, to get 1,000 true fans is a hell of a lot of work. Over many years, I think.
Yeah.
Well, not necessarily, but for most people it is. Some people, for one reason or another, accelerate that. But you have to keep plugging away at it to get there.
Yeah. Do you have a mailing list?
I do, yes.
How was that growing your mailing list? Mine is not growing, basically.
Well,
I forced all my friends to sign up, but because that's basically, and then I have a few people who got there by accident, I think, but because I feel like I do so many gigs and the bookings always go through somebody else's website, so I actually never get the contacts. So
yes, I know what you mean. So my first tip for that is, I just so happen to have right here, get some cards. So I've got a little business card here.
Yeah.
And on this side is a QR code. In fact, this might work. If people want to join my mailing list, they might be able to scan this QR code if they're looking at the video right now. I'm just going to hold it up for a while, scan the QR code.
No,
see if it works.
No, you have to hold it up. Hold it up more. Up more. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's coming.
There we go. So that should take you straight to my mailing list sign-up form, I believe.
Look at that.
Yeah.
How did you? Yeah, there you go, Christian Pryor.
Yeah. So that's one way to get people to sign up to your mailing list. Take the business cards. Yeah. And then so on gigs, like, you put these on the tables or whatever. If it's obviously this works if it's a seated table kind of gig.
Yeah.
Put them on and just explain that they can sign up to your social media, or if they want to keep up to date with the mailing list, find out other gigs that you're going to be doing. I think also, like, there has to be some incentives. Like, so for example, I'll sometimes do things like people on the mailing list get discounts for releases, or they might get exclusive stuff. So there's a reason to want to sign up other than just being spammed, you know. So yeah, that's one way to grow it.
How did you get the QR code?
I just Googled QR codes.
Yeah.
Just on Google. I can't remember what the company was, but I think it's a free one. I don't think I even had to pay for it. So I got the QR code, managed to set it up. So it's like just a one-time link. It takes you to that page. And then I got it printed on a business card, so people scan it. So that's one. That's a bit more of, I guess, in a way, that's a bit more an old school way. It's not old school because you're scanning a QR code, but
now people are so used to
card.
scan QR codes these days, because you can have restaurant menus. You always scan QR codes.
Yes,
exactly. That wasn't really a thing yet before a pandemic.
So it is, and that does work. I'll just put it up one more time. Here you go, people.
Scan the QR code.
Scan it. Sign up to my mailing list. So that's one way to do it. Another way is obviously all your friends and stuff, which is really good, but your friends are mostly going to be like more passive mailing list people, you know. A lot of my friends are signed up and they do read it, but they might not engage in the same way. Some of them do, some of them don't. It's just like with your friends, obviously they support what you do, but it's a bit of a different relationship sometimes, isn't it? With friends and family. So the other way, and it is hard, but I guess like one thing I did in the lead up to a release, I released a music video for my song "Why Should I Care," which you can now see on my YouTube, and in fact, you can see this thing on my YouTube as well. I did a Q&A with the director, Nick, who's also been one of the guests on my podcast. So we did a Q&A where we had people come, we all watched the video together, and then people asked questions to me and to Nick about the thing. So we just did this little online Zoom event, which was really fun. And people who wanted to come had to sign up through my mailing list to get a link, you know. So like you can do things like that, like run an event and it's a free event, and you're just saying like, just to sign up, you have to join my mailing list, and then you'll get an automated link sent to you that will give you the link to the event, you know.
That's a great idea.
So you can do things like that as well, you know, like just basically giving incentives for people to actually want to sign up, and you know, be transparent about it, and they can always leave if they go to the event, they get one of the emails and they don't like it, you know. But those are a few ideas I would say on how to grow it a bit more that I've done that have worked.
Because I feel like that gives also people a chance to feel involved in your project. So if you release a song and you release the video, the people that signed up for you listening, it's like having a listening party on Zoom, right?
Yeah, exactly. That was the idea, really.
Yeah. So they feel more involved. They're like, I feel like you always have to give people a little bit of ownership, so they really get captured and they're happy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Oh, that's great advice.
I think you just have to, like, especially if you're just a person doing your art and putting it out there, like people are not necessarily going to care, you know. You have to engage with people in different ways to do it, to get people interested, you know. You don't unfortunately have the benefit of a, you know, multi-million-dollar company doing billboards and, you know, a whole PR team and all that. Like, if you don't have that, you've got to find other ways to engage with people, because like obviously like the podcast is a really good way to do that as well, you know. Yeah. Podcast
turns out to be much greater than I thought it would be. I just thought I'll just sit here and talk to people. When I started my podcast, I emailed 10 people who wants to be on it, and I was like, no one's gonna do podcast with me. Like, I've got no money.
Everybody wants to do a podcast.
Nobody.
People love being asked, you know. It's like, really, me? Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Christian did.
Yeah, I did.
Yes.
Moi, little old me. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Have you ever worked with a publicist? Just because we spoke about it.
No, I haven't.
No.
I would I wouldn't be opposed to doing it at some point.
Yeah.
But I think like for example, I've only released singles so far. I think if I was going to release I will be releasing an EP or potentially an album next. Like, or maybe I've got one more single and then an EP and an album, EP or album. I haven't quite decided. I've got a load of music that I haven't decided quite how to release it yet. But I would probably think about it more then. But I think at this point I would only do it if I had some funding, because you know, I've put in a lot of money into my personal art, my own artwork, you know, and that's what I think, especially musicians, we really have to put a lot of money into it at the start, because you've got to pay for recording, mixing, mastering. You've got to pay other musicians to play your music, you know. Like there's so many costs associated, right? So I think, I would definitely be trying to apply for funding to get publicists and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, because I think you can spend a lot of time writing press releases and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If you've got other income sources, like you are really busy, so you probably make more money by actually concentrating on what you're good at rather than trying to send press releases.
I think so, and like, you know, there are other, like, there's other ways to engage people now as well, like what we've been talking about, trying to grow a mailing list, using social media, doing fun events, doing a podcast. Like that's just as good as paying a publicist £1,000 to get a song played on the radio one time, you know. Arguably better, right? Because a lot of the time, like, publicists will, I know from experience of other people working with them, like sometimes they'll do loads and they'll be really good, but sometimes they might do almost nothing, you know. Like you don't really know, and it's like, it's not even like they haven't tried, but they just might not be able to do much with what you've got. Whereas if you're doing a lot of things yourself, like you might almost have at least as good an impact. You know? Yeah, you had a cat in the background.
Oh, that's cute. Is it your cat?
It's my landlady's cat. Yeah, it's not mine.
So if I want to record an album, you've got more experience recording than me, which is none. I want to record a duo album with a pianist I work with.
Okay,
I've contacted a studio that didn't get back to me, but I guess you have to follow up. But I've got my heart set on one studio.
Is your heart set on that studio that didn't follow up?
Yes.
Then in that case, you have to follow up with them. But I would say lots of studios are very good at following up, because that's their whole business, right?
Yeah.
You know, they need to follow up. So if I don't know, if a studio didn't get back to you, it's not necessarily like it's a bad sign. It's just like, I would be a bit like, why are you not chasing up potential people who want to work with you? You know. But
I think because I've sent them an email just before Christmas, and normally I would have followed up just because it was kind of busy. But I asked for October 2022, so it's almost a year ahead of time. So they probably
maybe in that case, just follow up with them.
I asked
call them. Yeah, give them a call. Which studio is it?
I want to go to Artesuono in Italy. It's like half an hour from Venice, and they have a Fazioli piano.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
And they're actually, so a few years ago, one of my friends got a quote, and it was 500 a day, including engineer. Euros.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good for a Fazioli.
Yeah, it's pretty good for any studio, because in London, I know people who spend way more on studios without a
for sure. Yeah. And then why not be in Italy and do it, you
know? The reason I wanted to just be on the road is because sometimes I can get overwhelmed with London, and then I'm grumpy. Or
I agree. It's nice to record.
As soon as I get on a plane, I feel like I get a burst of energy.
Yeah, it's nice to record outside of London. I did an album in Wales in the summer for a friend of mine, Matthew Reed, bass player.
Yeah.
Played on his album, and it was so nice to be like, we were like right on the west coast of Wales, so it was really far away, but it's so nice to just go somewhere and record. Yeah, it's gorgeous. It was really nice. So yeah, I like recording away. What
would your advice be on finding sound studios?
Finding studios. So you've got to find what's important for you. So like for me, and for your project, it sounds like it'll be the same. It's important to have a good piano, you know. So like if you can try the piano before you book the time, you know, it might not be possible in the studio that you've recommended, because the one that you've contacted, because it's in Italy, but I mean, it's a Fazioli Grand, so it's probably going to be a pretty good condition. You'd expect that's going to be fine. But like sometimes you can go to a studio that has a piano, and the piano might not be great, or it might just not be, it might be good piano, but just not good for you, you know, because a piano is quite, you know, they can be quite personal things. So definitely making sure they have the right instrument if you want to record piano. And then other than that, I think like you know, finding a good price obviously is important, but maybe just like listening to albums by your peers that you like the sound of.
That's a good
So you're just like, oh, this sounds really good, this album, where was this recorded, and go there, you know.
Do you think studio is more important or the engineer is more important?
I think they're both equally as important. Because if you have a really good studio, but you have an engineer who has no idea how to mic up a drum kit, doesn't matter how good the studio is, your drums are going to sound absolutely terrible. So, so it has to be both. But usually, like the engineers are pretty good in the studios in London, you know, usually. So, like if you find an album and you really like the sound of it, you find that studio, most likely it'll be the same engineer, because a lot of studios, especially the smaller ones, are just owned by one person who's also the engineer anyway.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes not. I don't know. Like you can ask, like you can say, oh, I really like so-and-so's album that was recorded at your studio. Who was the engineer that did that? It might even be on the album's liner notes, and then you can request for that engineer, you know. So yeah, that's probably a good way to do it. Yeah.
Do you have a tuner on standby, or do you tune it once and then that's it?
No, you don't have one on standby. You just tune it at the beginning.
Okay.
And you have to pay for that. Usually the studio doesn't pay for that. Like you have to pay for the tuner to come and tune the piano as part of your fee for the hiring of the studio.
Okay.
Which is a shame.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
But that's a lot of things to consider that people might, like people that first time. Luckily, I'm surrounded by people that have more experience with recording than I do. So I just, you know, I can ask people, but I think it's important for people to know that they have to really do their research, because otherwise might be disappointing. That's just what I wanted to say. Might be disappointing experience if you didn't do your research and you pay a lot of money.
Yeah, I was certainly disappointed the first time I found out that I had to pay for my own tuner. But I found out it was pretty standard. But yeah, like that's another thing. Don't be afraid to ask other people who have done it more. You know, just you know, if you've got a mate who's recorded an album already, and you get a quote for something, and you're like, does this sound right to you? You should definitely check with other people, because you don't want to be ripped off. Yeah. It's unlikely that you'll be ripped off, to be honest. I don't think there's not much of that going on in the recording studio world. There are some studios that are monumentally more expensive than others, though, you know.
Yeah.
But you just got to find the right price, you know, the right place and stuff like that. There's so many in London, though, you know.
So many. That makes it harder. I feel like if there's only 3, you might just even, you know, you always know somebody that recorded at one of the 3. But if there's like 500, and also like each studio is different for, you know, obviously you're a pianist, you want a good acoustic piano. Some people might want good electronics, so they have the options to play around, you know, with their stuff. So.
Yeah. I mean, I've definitely been booked on recording sessions at a studio that's like a good price for whoever it is that's booking the session, and like it might be really a good sound as well. But for everyone else, it's fine because they're bringing their own instruments. But for me, I've shown up and the piano has been a total piece of shit, you know. And it's like, excuse my language, but I don't know if that's allowed. But like it happens, and it's just like, well, I don't see that. It's going to be really hard to make this sound good, you know, because the piano just doesn't sound good. So it's like, you know, showing up to record and being handed like a beginner's like toy guitar or something. Like, right, you gotta do your yeah. Like it can be like that. So that's really disappointing when that happens, you know. And I almost feel like this is a waste of my time, you know.
Yeah.
Like I did have a recording session fairly recently that was a bit like that, where the piano was just so terrible that, you know, like just feel and sound that I just was like, I don't want to be here. But that's pretty rare. that was really unfortunate. You know, like it would have been better to play on an electric piano, but I also don't really want to record on an electric piano. I mean, it depends on the project. Sometimes electric piano is fine, but yeah. So the piano is a big one actually to look out for. Like make sure it's decent. And if you're not a piano player and you're booking a piano player, like maybe see if they can check the piano as well, you know.
Yeah.
But
if it's close enough to do that.
Yeah, if it's close, and if it's like, I mean, if you're hiring a piano player in and you're paying them, then you should really pay them to go and check the piano as well, because that's like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And that depends on your budget. It's difficult. It is difficult.
Are studios open to that? Did you ever have an issue asking for some time? Because like a lot of studios are booked out pretty much every day, aren't they?
I mean, yeah, but I think it's fine if you just like, I'd just like to come and like literally 5-10 minutes. Like it's not like you want to spend hours there. Just like literally just go and have a look at it, just get a feel for it and stuff. Like,
okay.
That's usually fine. Yeah. Some of them even offer it. Like there's some, because there are some recording studios that pride themselves on being like a piano recording studio. Yeah. And they're like, come in for a free hour-long chat and play on the piano. Like there's a couple of places that offer that, which is really nice. Great. Yeah, it is really good. So they must factor that into their day, you know, to have that. Yeah.
Yeah. So where do you go from there? Let's say you found your recording studio, you found your musicians, you did the recording.
Yeah.
Mastering. Is mastering normally, is that a completely different process? Do you take your raw recordings away and have somebody else master? Or do studios offer people to master your recordings as part of like a certain package, or?
Yeah, so good question. Actually, you have to get it mixed before you get it mastered. So mixing is like a different thing as well. So some studios will offer mixing and some will offer mastering as well. So once you've recorded everything, let's say you've got like vocals, piano, double bass, drums, something like that. That's a very simple lineup. You've got to get it mixed. So each of those parts is a load of different recordings that you layer on top of each other, right? You know, it's like a bunch of microphones creating one audio file. So there's like one audio file for the piano, there's one for the bass. There's usually multiple ones for the drums, because you use different microphones, different parts of the drums, and one for the singer. So you've got a load of different audio files that are all layered on top of each other. Now, if you just put them there and press play, it might not sound that good because the drums might be way too loud, or one of the drums might be too loud, or the bass might be too, like the low end of the bass might be too heavy. So you have to do all of this treatment after. Essentially, it's like the editing process with a podcast, right? You have to make sure the volume of all the different instruments is balanced really well. You might want to pan, you know, so you might want to have the piano slightly to the right, the bass in the middle, and then some of the drums slightly to the left, or, you know, like you do all this stuff like panning and getting everything sounding really, really good. And you might add reverb, so like that echoey sound or the delay, stuff like that. There's loads of mixing, which I really enjoy that. Like I've done some mixing, like I do it a bit for the production stuff I do. Like I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but I really like it. I kind of, it's like an art form in itself, the mixing side, because it really, like, you craft the sound of a track through mixing a lot of the time. Then once you've mixed it, then you export that as one audio file, and that's everything, right? Everything is all done. And you might be paying somebody separately to do that, you know? So you might be paying somebody a few £100s per track to mix, because that's quite time consuming in itself, just doing the mixing.
So it's not like the whole album gets mixed by the same person. You can be like...
Well, no, it might be.
But you can also, like, if you have different goals, you can also send it off to different people.
Yeah, you can if you want. Yeah. You might... like you might argue that it's better to have one person mix the whole album because you'd have a consistent sound.
Yeah.
But that depends on the project, right? Like you might want different sounds for different songs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then once that mixing is done, you export all of that audio as just one audio file. That's your mix. And then you send your mix to the mastering, and then it gets mastered. And the mastering is another stage of audio processing on top of the mixing, where they usually again do some things to the EQ. So they might tweak the different frequencies, like they might take a little bit off the low end, add a bit to the high end, do some stuff in the middle. I don't really know. It's kind of like witchcraft what mastering people do. They might make it louder without distorting it. Like often now, like a lot of pop songs are really loud, you know, and that's all done through mastering. Yeah, so they get it sort of, mastering people get the audio file ready for distribution, so it sounds good compared to everything else. Because if you just send your mix out without it being mastered, it'll be a lot quieter usually than everything else. So if you have it in a Spotify playlist, everything will sound a certain level, and then your song will come on, and it just won't sound as big or as loud. It just won't sound as good or as present. So the mastering is a really important stage. Yeah, and I would recommend a company called Metropolis Mastering. Actually, they're a really big company. They've mastered like big artists, you know, like, but they do this really great scheme for unsigned people, where they charge something like 80, I think it's like 80 quid a track, including VAT, which is pretty damn good for what you're getting from those people, because they are really, they're like top, basically as good as the industry gets with mastering, and they have this really great scheme. So if you're unsigned, go to Metropolis. I think it's pretty good. It would be hard to go wrong there.
Yeah, that's really good to know, because also, like, for myself, but also for the people listening, I like to ask when I find something somebody is really good at explaining it, I'll jump at it.
Okay. Well, I hope that was clear, like what the process is. Yeah,
that was really clear. I didn't actually know that. I always wondered if, because obviously sometimes you're listening to music on a playlist and suddenly something gets really quiet, and you're like trying to increase the volume, and it's just not going
and
up.
It's max. And it's not going up. And that could be the master isn't good, or
just an older.
No, well, actually, the other possibility, what's more likely, is that Spotify has made it too quiet. Spotify has an algorithm that that basically it tries to normalize all of the different songs. Normalizing meaning making everything mostly the same, but the algorithm doesn't work for every track. So some tracks, usually ones that might actually be a bit too loud, it just crushes them and makes them super small and really quiet. So sometimes actually you might buy that same song on iTunes and get the raw audio file, and it just sounds incredible. And then you listen to it on Spotify and it sounds like absolute poop, you know?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's because of the Spotify algorithm that is doing that. And in fact, everything on Spotify, the audio quality is lower than, say, for example, if you bought the original audio file from iTunes or Bandcamp and then got it and listened to it directly that way, the audio quality is always better, because Spotify does decrease audio quality.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know.
It's kind of hard to hear. Like, you can hear it better with some things than others.
Yeah. So let's say I mastered my track.
Yeah.
Then you gotta make a decision, because you have to either release it on Bandcamp. There's bias about Spotify, because I feel like there's musicians that are like, I don't care, I want to be heard, and there's musicians that are like, Spotify's the devil, I don't want to have anything to do with it. And then there's also options of having physical products that you potentially can sell at gigs, like CDs, vinyls. How do you go from there?
I think you should do everything, personally. I don't think you should limit yourself. Like, the Spotify question is a really interesting one. Unfortunately, like I do think that the Spotify business model is really bad for artists, and I think that there must be a better way for it to happen, you know, because the numbers are ridiculous, right? But at the same time, you have to be realistic about, we are living in a world right now where that is mostly how people are listening to music, you know? So I think if you're putting music on Spotify, maybe you just have to treat it as something different, you know, treat it as a bit of a shop window, you know, and think like, this is a sample of what I have to offer. But if the person finds me on Spotify and really likes what I'm doing, and then decides to explore what I have to offer a bit more, it's then down to you, the artist, to be like, welcome to my world. Okay, you listen to my song on Spotify for free. Check out all this other stuff that I'm doing, you know. Obviously it's a lot of work. Like some artists would say, no, all I want is to just put my music out there and that's enough. But unfortunately, that's not how it is anymore, right? You know, so if you have your music on Spotify, they find it, they like it, then they come and find you and they find out, oh, you're doing a podcast as well. They listen to your podcast, and in your podcast you say, I've just released something on Bandcamp for Bandcamp people only. Go ahead and, like, you know, they might be like, oh, right, cool. So it's all got to work together, right? So you know, have it on Spotify, but then also have the stuff on Bandcamp, have the physical stuff to sell. Do as much as you're capable of doing, I think, because that's it can be used as a positive thing if you want it to. At the same time, yeah, I don't know. I do think that we, as a community, could change the way Spotify is done. So I know there's a bit of a contradiction to what I'm saying there, but I don't know what the answer is to that. Yeah.
It's a difficult one, because I feel like Spotify has, for most people, replaced the radio now. So they listen to Spotify like you used to just turn on the radio on, like, a music program or a news program or whatever. That's now Spotify.
Yeah, right. And like Spotify playlists are now radio, right?
Yeah.
Like,
so I don't think people still think about the product when they listen to Spotify. I don't think there's, for the general public, like non-musicians and non-musicians friends who get complained to about this issue by musicians. I think the average person does not understand the relationship between an artist, like the product that an artist puts out, and the Spotify playlist. The Spotify playlist is so normal for them that it's, you know, it's like breathing.
But they also didn't, those people didn't understand that relationship when they were just listening to them on the radio, and that was their only option. You're absolutely right. And I think that's just how it is, isn't it? Like, the Spotify, like, a lot of artists are like, okay, Spotify, I can't really make much money from it unless I get in a Spotify playlist, because then you can actually make some money because you might get hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of streams if you get in certain playlists, which is obviously awesome to have some money coming in or something, right? Like, you know, if you make a song and then it makes you some money, that is on Spotify, that's a bonus. But you've got to see that as like bonus money, because first of all, you can get dropped from that playlist at any time. And secondly, as you said, most of the time those people are listening to that music on those playlists very passively. They're not they're not listening to every 1,000 songs in that particular playlist and be like, oh, I'm going to check out this artist, I'm going to check out that artist. They might check out a few and you might get a few fans from that, but most likely, out of those 200,000 streams that you got from that playlist, how many of those people have gone onto your Bandcamp and then listened to your stuff? How, you know, a tiny percentage. So it is something different, isn't it? Yeah.
If you think about it that way, if you're thinking about something by the likes of 200,000 views, if 1% goes onto your Bandcamp page, that's still 2,000 people. It's not insignificant.
But I don't think it's even as high as 1%.
Really?
I don't know because I've never had a song in a playlist, so it might well be. But you're right though. Like, it is good. Like, it's obviously all good PR, but I just think you can't be relying on it. You know, you've just got to see it as one part of the whole picture. And I definitely don't think Spotify should be the priority for most independent artists.
Yeah, I feel like it's talked about a lot with frustration, which I understand, and it's sometimes ridiculous when you see the number that somebody got, you know, 70,000 streams and they get a check for $12.50 or something stupid
Yeah,
like that.
it's mad, isn't it?
But
But
I feel like it's just not, I feel like it's not what royalties, radio royalties or something like that used to be like. And you always have to
no,
keep on reinventing yourself because the people, the generations now that take Spotify for granted, most of them do take it for granted. You know,
yes,
it's I think the probably best thing you can do is educate the audience, can't you? Like to
I think
really,
so. Yeah,
yeah,
I think educate the audience is good. I mean, because a lot of people still like a lot of people see Spotify as like if you've got music on Spotify, they're like, oh, you must be big. You know, a lot of people don't realize that anybody can put music on Spotify. Really, like when I meet people, everyday people, and I tell them I'm a musician, they're like, oh, have you got stuff on Spotify?
yeah,
And I'm like, yeah. And they go, wow, oh, okay, you're serious then, you know. So like a lot of people view it that way. It's as though saying, oh, has your music been played on the radio? Yes, it has. Oh, wow, you know, like my music has been played on the radio. It's done nothing for my profile whatsoever. I don't think.
yeah,
Like, it's really cool to have music played on the radio, and I'm sure it does help people. But for me personally, it has done nothing yet. Same as Spotify, to be honest with you. But it's definitely not a barometer for success, you know.
mm,
Um, but like lay people think it is, you know, and that's just because that's how they see it. So I think yeah, you're right. Educating those people is good as long as it's an appropriate time. You know, if it's just a random person on the bus, you don't need to go into whole thing about like, well, actually, yeah, I'm on Spotify, but you know what? That doesn't really make any difference to me. So, you know, if anything, you should go to my Bandcamp, and you know, like that's not
yeah.
necessary. But yeah, I don't
That's,
know. Maybe the word is starting to get out there. I'm not sure.
yeah. I think now more and more. I think the people are more aware now that a bunch of celebrities have pulled in.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, which is what we needed, really. Actually, you needed people like Taylor Swift and Neil Young and all the rest to pull their music from Spotify.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm a bit sad that Joni Mitchell's taken her music off because she's like one of my idols and I love her music and I would listen to her music a lot on Spotify. You know,
Mhm.
I was, and now I think it's gone as far as I know. So I'm sad about that, but maybe it will help.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, I think a
but
lot of times it's also artists. I've spoken to artists that are signed with labels and
yeah.
they're like anti Spotify, but the label will put it on Spotify. They're like, okay, you signed with us, our stuff goes on.
Yeah, because the label makes more money out of it. You know,
Okay.
it's in the label's interest to have stuff on Spotify because labels have separate deals with Spotify, and a
Mhm.
lot of labels not only have separate deals with Spotify where they're getting certain percentages just of the bucket, um, also they own the company. So you know, record companies have all invested in Spotify and own percentages of Spotify. So yeah, the record companies themselves, they want to have as much stuff on there as possible because it's going to bring more people onto the platform anyway. You know,
Mm. Interesting.
yeah,
So last step, sorry, I
it's
keep
okay.
on asking you about this album stuff.
No,
After
it's fine.
you've done everything, you have to
Yeah.
register your song, right? Because otherwise people can steal
Yes.
it. Yeah, how do you do that?
Um, so it depends on where you are. Like in the UK, you register it with PRS, which
Hmm.
is the Performing Rights Society, and also what's it called? I'm going blank. There's another one that I also have done. PRS and uh, another. I don't remember the other one. That's so bad. But here's the thing, right? So it uh, it's quite easy to forget some of this stuff, right? So actually, I would advise people to sign up with a company that does all of it for you, right?
Okay.
There are companies out there that just deal with all of that stuff, and it's not, you don't have to worry about, oh, what if my song gets really big in Brazil, something like that, you know, like they just take care of it internationally.
Mm.
So the company I use is called Songtrust,
Okay.
and you just pay them like, I think there's like $100 registration fee, something like that. And
Yeah.
once you've paid that, you just send them all of your information for tracks, and they register it all, and they take a percentage of the royalties. Like I I think it's like 10% or 15%. I don't know, something that's fairly reasonable. And then they just take care of all of it for you, because it is a lot to have to deal with, you know. So they're sort of like an independent publishing company that you can just sign up for.
Okay, yeah.
That's something, yeah, I would definitely recommend just handing over to people. Unless you really love this stuff and you want to look into it a lot and read all about it and figure it all out for yourself, by all means, go ahead. But
yeah,
for me, my eyes glaze over when I start reading all that sort of stuff. So I just decided to give it all over to a different company.
Yeah, that's really good advice, because I think sometimes it's worth to delegate the things. As you said, it's a lot to remember. So I think for anyone out there, including myself, it's good and okay and completely normal to outsource things. I feel like there's sometimes people are like, I'm not big enough to outsource things, but I don't think you have to be a certain size, because there's always contractors. Like, for example, when I got my podcast blurb written, because I had no clue of what I want to write, I paid a girl on Fiverr $8 to write it.
Shame. Yeah. No, absolutely. You should. Like, also, first of all, $8, like, that's great. Like, you can do that sort of thing now, you know. So, like, Fiverr is awesome for that sort of stuff. You know, I totally agree. I mean, I don't outsource enough stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Like, technically, you know, maybe outsourcing podcasting editing would be a good idea. But then I'm so particular about it. I'm like, I don't think I would do, I don't want to give that to somebody else. But at a certain point, you do need to be able to let go and like outsource these things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's certainly something I think it's worth outsourcing. Like, for example, mixing. Like, I can mix, you know, I was talking about the mixing earlier. I can do it, but I would rather pay someone else to do it who I think would do a better job. And it just takes the stress away from me, you know.
And it's also sometimes it's much faster to have someone
who specializes
on it.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot faster. Because, you know, you've got other things to do, right? Usually all of this stuff, like, if you're an independent artist, like, it's not paying the bills, at least not straight away. So you've also got to do all of your other work around it. So if you can afford it, I think try to outsource a lot of stuff. The other organization, by the way, is PPL.
Is there anything you want to talk about to close this up? Is there anything we can look forward to?
Well, I've got some more podcasts are coming soon. I'm just recording some more now, so I'm going to have another batch of podcasts coming out. I do have another single coming out soon, and I'm just waiting for the video to be finished on that one, which that should be finished soon. It's being the video's been it's an animation by a very talented animator who's also my cousin, which is great, which is going to be really cool. It's really good that we can collaborate together. So I don't have a date for that yet, but it will be pretty soon. But obviously, like, if you sign up to my mailing list, you will be able to see when that comes out. And like I said, I've got a bunch of other music as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna link your
coming soon
page.
Great, thanks.
And everything.
So I'm going to be releasing some live performances on YouTube over the next few weeks, actually, because I've got quite a few live performances from a gig I did a while ago. So yeah, there's like a steady stream of stuff that's coming out. So if you just follow and all that stuff, then you'll be able to keep updated. And yeah, go and check out some of my stuff if you haven't heard it already. Go and check it out on Spotify. Or maybe not Spotify, maybe go over to Bandcamp and have a listen to it there.
Yeah, go to Bandcamp. Yeah. We're the good people now. We told you how hard we work. You gotta go to Bandcamp.
Go to Bandcamp. Don't even feel like you have to pay for it, but just listen to it on Bandcamp instead, you know.
Yeah, because you get 3 listens for free anyway, right?
Something like that,
yeah.
But yeah, wherever, it's fine. It's all nice, isn't it? You know.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. It's been really fun to chat.
Thanks so much for joining me. Yeah. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It's a completely free of charge way to support me. And actually all podcasts, YouTubers.
It helps a lot too.
It helps a lot if there's engagement on your posts. So please do that and see you guys next week.